Hi, I'm David, and welcome to Happy Turnings. In this video, I cut out a bulb link from a white oak log. I picked it up while driving past a neighbor's house. It was a tree that had gotten blown down in the wind. They had it cut up into these slices and it's all stacked up out in front. Loaded up my trunk and brought it back as quickly as I can, at least what I could fill and what my wife would let me keep. Anyways, while drying, this piece did do a lot of cracking to it, which was as intended. Here I found the center of the piece and made it a circle, made basically what I wanted the size to be out of it there. Cut off the corners here to alleviate some of the weight of the piece. And to address some of the small cracks that developed, I used some very thin CA glue, commonly known as super glue. And then I also used some black medium thick CA glue in some of the wider cracks to give this piece a little bit of added stability, as well as a little bit of a slightly added feature too. With this project, I use a faceplate directly attached to the workpiece. This is due to the weight and the awkward shape of the piece. With this white oak, it is extremely dense. I've had it drying for about 2 years now, and even still, this piece weighs almost 10 pounds. Throughout turning this piece, I had continued to find surface cracks, and this led me to turn away a bit more than originally intended. However, this workpiece, when starting off here, is about 10 inches across and about 3 inches thick. Here, I've trued the piece to the lathe and cleaned up the edges and sides, and I'm cleaning up the bottom part of the bowl. And I'm currently making a tenon in which I will grip with my 4-jaw chuck as I will turn this part around. This side here will eventually be the bottom of the bowl. Recently, a couple of coworkers had watched my previous videos and suggested I make these a little more entertaining by telling stories or even jokes along the way. I think this is a good suggestion, and this video happens to be a great one to start, and I'll tell you why in a moment. First, a little joke. A mom, dad, their son and daughter are driving down a rural road. The dad sees a bunch of cattle in a field and points and says, "There's a flock of cows just over there." The daughter in the back looks up from her book and says, "Heard," while sighing and rolling her eyes. Dad looks at Mama, who at this point knows what's happening and is trying to contain her laughter, as he says, "Heard what?" The son looks up from his book and says, "Herd of cows," as he shakes his head and goes back to reading. Mom is just about to crack up as Dad responds, "Of course I've heard of cows. There's a whole flock of them right over there." Oh, I love a good dad joke. So, why this video is a good one to start with the stories? Well, the recipient of this bowl also happens to be my uncle, a Purple Heart Vietnam veteran, mentor to veterans, and actively helps and supports multiple veterans organizations. As you could imagine, the man can tell you stories for hours, but this is not one about his time of war or the many people whose lives he's made better, mine included. This is just a brief story of his receiving the Purple Heart and the unique experience I was fortunate to witness about 10 years ago. I will say brief, as this entire story spans more than 20 years. As we know, American veterans of Vietnam were not treated the same as those of wars before them. My uncle's experience that led to him being awarded the Purple Heart for quite some time was never acknowledged as to even having happened. Even after it was, it had been put on the so-called back burner and was just not going anywhere. My uncle, through his travels and time spent volunteering, met many wonderful and sometimes high-ranking individuals. Well, one of these high-ranking, wonderful individuals at the local Air Force base where my uncle spends some of his time got wind of his situation and the story behind the recognition. A few months later, we'll say, and the day has come, as my uncle arrives to the location for the ceremony and turns to the corner towards the ballroom. He is greeted by my older brother, an at the time active duty airman that had been deployed on assignment, now in town on leave. You see, when the high-ranking individual found out that my older brother was in the Air Force at the time, the two of them worked to get my brother able to come home to be present for the ceremony. As my uncle entered the ballroom, he was greeted by his siblings, family, and friends. At the front of the room is a high-ranking individual along with my brother, and my uncle is to stand up front with them. The ceremony commences. We hear the stories, we share the tears, and for a brief moment I got a glimpse of a man who I hadn't seen before. Not the rugged, I can take what you give me and give it right back at you man, but a man who was ready to give it all to try to save those he cared about most. A man who took the hit, and he keeps going. Then, the high-ranking, and I'll say it again, wonderful individual handed the Purple Heart to my brother to award to our uncle. My older brother got to pen the Purple Heart on our uncle. Here's a picture. This was a cherished memory, and it makes me happy to share it with you. And here I've switched to the top and inside of the bowl, working on getting that rim cleaned up a bit. At this point, I've cleaned the sides and bottom a little bit better, and now I'm returning to the top and inside of it to get this all cleared out here. I had also used a little bit of super glue here to stabilize it a little bit better as well. Here I'm really cleaning up and defining the rim, as well as the actual thickness of the bowl that I want it to be. I've gotten to the depth that I was looking for the bowl. I've gotten out my scraper and am currently cleaning up a lot of the tool marks on the sides and bottom of the bowl, getting it to a nice even flat surface across the sides and bottom there. I begin the sanding process here with 80 grit sandpaper and then 120 to really target out those tool marks, anything that might be left there. Cleaning the bowl with some denatured alcohol mixed with shellac. It's kind of like a light coat of shellac, just mostly denatured alcohol, very watered down for the most part. This is to help pull any loose grain from any tear out that had been that's happened, and stiffen the fibers. This way these grits of sand paper that I'm going through here can get a better bite and leave a better surface when it's done. And here I'm going through that process one more time. And with this piece I'm using my food safe finish for wood. You can find this on my Etsy shop. That's etsy.com/shop/Happy Turnings Store. You can also find a link in the description below. Uncle, I hope you know that I love you and I miss you, and I hope that this bowl will last you for many happy turnings to come. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked the joke and the story. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, remember to hit that thumbs up, and if this kind of content interests you, be sure to subscribe, because it's free. I hope you come back again, and until then, I wish you happy turnings.